to D&D Beyond, and I am very excited to re-inaugurate our series that I just made up in my head called Tell Me About Your Character. I am joined by the one and only Sam de Leve, who is going to tell me about making a level 20 wizard slash cleric. Hi, Sam. How you doing today?
I'm doing well and very glad to be talking about the wizard slash cleric. I thought at first I was supposed to tell you about my character, and frankly, it could just use some work. I don't know that we are creatures of good character here, but at the very least, may our foibles entertain you, gentle audience. Hi,
That's a whole
Sam de
separate
Leve.
stream. We just compare personal failings. That'll be for the after segment. But today we're talking terrifying wizard power. I loved as I was talking to you about which one we wanted to spotlight today. That you were like cleric 1, war mage 19, and basically cartoon question marks showed up over my head. So we are going to dive in today. What is the briefest version? Who is Tails? And you can follow along in the chat because the link should be going through right now. Because Sam was generous enough to share the character sheet.
Tales came from a campaign called Theogony of Kairos, GM'd by Invitation to Parties B. Dave Walters, whereby the members of the party started in a town at level zero, not zero,
The cantrips of
and
people.
the
Sorry.
Amy Dallin, my gentle audience, perfection itself.
I'm so
So
sorry.
these cantrips were then leveled up instantaneously by the will of the gods from the very pilot. So I spoiler not for you, gentle audience, from 0 to 20, and so get to experience not slowly acclimating to the godlike powers that so many adventurers ultimately end up with, but kind of being thrown at them. Our Tales was a Dickensian urchin by conceit and a heck of a bookworm, which is why we have a knowledge cleric who grows into a great big wizard with, and this was made in real life and wouldn't even fit onto camera, the best book, the Wizard's Grimoire, which is, I can't even show how tall it is on camera. Multiple feet is this great book. And as a bookworm, it's kind of perfect for them, but it's also wild to see what kind of spells such a book might have. Tails.
So, for folks who might not have seen the original campaign or the various one-shot appearances of this character in the intervening time, what are the basic stats on breakdown on Tails?
Yes, Tails is pretty aggressively tuned to be a very good wizard, a very smart kiddo who knows a lot of things. Tails was the only member of this party to be a full caster all of the way up. And so having all of the ninth level spell kind of things that traditionally come along with it, and was also, as it turned out, the only one with access to cleric healing spells. We had some paladin, but this war mage made good use of that one level in cleric more than one might have expected, and used some ninth level spells for some very unusual clerical errors. Uh, but it means
So, what
that
what order
they
did these levels come in and why?
Yes, great. So they start out just loving books a whole lot. They start at cleric level 1 for some reasons that we talked about in our level up stream at the beginning of this year. And that was to give them their uh, their wisdom saving throws, because frankly, those come at you a lot, and every class has their own mixture of saving throws. And the first level you start will determine which ones you have. Did it bite me any booty that I didn't have proficiency in intelligence saves? don't need to get into that, but the point is that wisdom saving throws are very valuable and a good reason to consider starting with a level in Cleric. That level in Cleric also gave me medium armor and shield proficiencies, so I can start with that nice, comfy armor class that we see. I get a couple spells to hopefully de squishify myself further. That is not an impressive health pool you see there, especially not for a level 20 character. Uh, but that first level in Cleric goes a long way. Yes, I could have had heavy armor, uh, taken a different style of Cleric than Knowledge Cleric, but Tails is a bookworm, and what Knowledge Cleric gave me was access to knowledge skills with expertise. You get two from a handful when you first take that level in Knowledge Cleric. And so, between that and their variant human prodigy feat, Hales reads things. They read a lot of things to be a proper bookworm.
So I want to pause there for 1 second because that was one of my first questions when you showed me this build. Is that I kind of stared at it for a minute, going, so many dots. Because if you look at this list of skill proficiencies, there are not one, not two, but three skills with the double dot of expertise, which is a doubling of your proficiency bonus, and which is not an easy thing to get on your character sheet without some very specific choices. So we will be circling back around to that feat choice when we talk about feats more generally. But uh, you chose one level of cleric and then a whole bunch of wizard. How did this help you achieve the goal of this build?
Yes. So I thought ultimately I could do without the signature spell capstone of level 20, but I always knew I wanted to go in on wizard. Tails is the wizard build that I had always dreamed of. They always tell you that they're very squishy, mildly ineffectual at lower levels and then become progressively more fearsome. The classic linear fighter, quadratic wizard, they say, in terms of power curve. It's not quite that. It turns out there's incredibly respectable combat across the board in 5th edition if you're just looking at whack, whack, hit with stick. Um, but when I was given the opportunity to build a 20th level character, I built a wizard because
Phenomenal cosmic power?
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And an itty bitty mouse under their hat. Because again, urchin background. We've discussed this, my chat. Big fan. Big fan of urchin background, strictly for the mouse. In this case, the mouse was named Eds. He was the brains of the operation. Um, so we went War Mage with this because these are effectively levels that were given to Tails, dictated in part by this like 0 to 20 circumstance, meaning that it's not necessarily the style of wizardry that if they had studied all the way up, they might have opted for. But it is very fun to play because as a style, War Mage is, I don't really want to lose my concentration. I don't think I will. A whole lot of this build, and we'll get back into more feats that support it, are about the idea of concentration. And this is pre Tasha's, post Xanathar's, and War Mage is a fantastic class, subclass to give a lot of tools to maintain concentration, to be beefier while you have it. It actually gives increases to AC and saving throws, I believe, while you're concentrating on a spell. And that's what a lot of us do as wizards. We'll have some big, expensive, awesome spell going, and then every turn, I don't know, you come in like a fireball. But it's always
I'm
such
gonna
a
pop
bummer
over
when
for
I
one
get
sec.
hit.
When you when For those who might not be familiar, the war magic is one of your options for your wizard tradition, and it gives you features at second, sixth, 10th, and 14th, of course: arcane deflection, tactical wit, power surge, durable magic, and deflecting shroud. Do you have a favorite from among those that you wanted to maybe mention?
Yes, so durable magic, the +2 to AC and all saving throws is really big. It stacks on top of the armor proficiencies and shield that we started out with that level in Cleric, so now they're even more. If a hit gets in, it's gonna go badly, so we have to just keep stacking the AC higher and higher. But the other thing is that +2 to saving throws includes Constitution saving throws, the thing that you have to maintain concentration, so it's a lovely virtuous cycle within war magic. It is a lovely subclass because it does a certain playstyle and supports it brilliantly.
So for that play style, I feel like we should probably dip into the question of some feats. This character has some very intriguing feats, and I would love to know how you got them and why you picked them.
Yes. So starting off as a variant human, I took Prodigy in part because I tend to like to take that as a starting character. It is an early on kind of thing, a prodigy. So one doesn't necessarily come by it later, and to underscore the bookworm nature of tales. From there on, with the powers given to me and the feats that were taken, Warcaster and Resilient Con both support. I don't want to lose my concentration. I cast an 8th level spell. I expect it to stay there. And Warcaster allows for advantage on Constitution saving throws, while Resilient Con grants a little attribute bonus to your con score, but also gives you proficiency in Constitution saving throws. So if you aren't a sorcerer or a warlock, if you don't, or you didn't take a level in fighter or anything like that, I went for the Wisdom saving throw proficiency, starting by that level in Cleric. But by the end, I still get proficiency in Constitution saving throws to hang on to those concentration spells by virtue of the Resilient Con feat.
I love that. Now, you did you pick Resilient and Warcaster up at various like level ups in place of an ability score improvement or via other means?
Yes, those are in place of ASIs. So once I maxed out my intelligence, those were some fairly high priority, and there were a lot of sample builds that I went through testing out at like different ASIs that I could take, what my feats would look like, how to distribute my ability scores to say take into account the +1 that you get for Resilient Con. Because I was just being thrown smack dab into level 20, I could build the whole thing at once.
Right.
If I were doing it piece by piece, I would use my backwards building method for this one just to make sure that I came out where I wanted to. But this was all at once. We just went to the wall at 20.
And Sam is, of course, referring to if as we've referenced a couple times so far. We did a video earlier this year on leveling up and making choices, where they talked about the idea of pointing at this target and then working backwards to figure out how to get there as a way of approaching character building, which I thought was brilliant. Do you happen to remember when you were doing your ability scores for this one in the first place? Did you do a standard array, a point buy, or roll for it?
Mm. I believe I know that I did not roll for it, because I did want to enjoy the exercise of starting from a sort of mutually accessible baseline. What can
Sure.
I make this build look at the end? I believe that they are standard array, uh, or I would want to say that they are standard array, but the fact that I have an 8 in strength and a 9 in charisma leads me to conclude that it was in fact a point buy build.
Mm. So not talking your way out of much trouble and not punching your way out of much trouble, but provided with many other resources. Uh, let's see. So those are our three feats. Quickly, just because we mentioned prodigy, but what is prodigy?
Yes, Prodigy is a feat that gives you a handful of proficiencies that you might not have started out with by virtue of your background or your class, and is gives you a skill proficiency of your choice, a tool proficiency of your choice, and fluency in an additional language of your choice. Also, and this is a big reason why I like to take it, you get expertise in a skill in which you already have proficiency. That can include the skill proficiency that you just chose, or any of the other ones that you've taken somewhere along the way. So, for my prodigy, I believe I took the expertise in perception, which I had gotten from the initial build of the character. I think the human skill proficiency, because I got the nature and arcana expertises by virtue of the knowledge cleric. But I wanted to make sure someone could see what was about to come murder us.
You
Expertise and
could give us a lot.
proficiency.
I was gonna say you could give us a lot of information and then get smacked down by it, but you actually will probably survive it fairly well because of this robust building. Do you have, speaking of how to survive those things, some favorite spells or attacks for Tails?
Hmm. So there is one class feature that higher level wizards get that I think is very lovely and that you get on your way up, called spell mastery. You can cast a given first level spell and given second level spell, and I believe if you 20 out also as a capstone, the third level spell, without expending a spell slot when you have them prepared. Hales has shield and misty step. So
I am
I
not
can
here, and if
cast
I am, you
shield
can't hit me.
without. Exactly. So being able to spam the shield spell in effect, still subject to action economy, but not limited by spell slots, is it it was very, very, very nice. In terms of other spells Tales took, uh, they have a lot of very blasty spells. It fits nicely with War Mage, and I just wanted to see what it was like. A lot of them uh, are. I would take a couple that were anti-caster, like Feeble Mind and Counterspell. I took some that targeted different saving throws so that I would have an even distribution depending on the type of enemy I faced. Some of my damage spells are con saves, some are dex. I take a handful of wisdom saves just to evenly have different tools to solve a problem. It can be very tempting just to throw fireball at everything. But if you face something dexterous, you can cast a thunder wave and see how strong their constitution is. Uh, a favorite spell, the concentration spell I cast all of the time, is 8th level Illusory Dragon. Um, it conjures an illusion of a dragon, which flies around as you concentrate on it, and on your bonus action will just 7d6 of elemental damage of your choice. It's just a great one to have around while you're doing other fireballs, and means that I'm not casting two spells with my action and bonus action. And it's a dragon! What's not to love?
I love. Okay, by gathering
Finally, the
threads of. Sorry, just a
wait,
quick. This one's from Xanathar's
please.
Guide. By gathering threads of shadow material from the Shadowfell, you create a huge shadowy dragon in an unoccupied space that you can see. It lasts for the spell's duration and occupies the spaces for a creature. When it appears, any of your enemies that can see it must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or become frightened of it for 1 minute. We talked a lot about being scared of dragons when Fistbands was coming out, but I always love to see that thematically. As a bonus action, you can move it up to 60 feet, and at any point during that movement, cause it to exhale a blast of energy. 60-foot cone originating from its space and choosing a damage type, which I can suddenly see gives you a whole lot of flexibility. There's an intelligence save to be. I love that, to be damaged by the breath of the illusory dragon. Um, and the illusion is tangible, but attacks miss it automatically. It succeeds on all saving throws and is immune to all damaging conditions. So I love this. This is very, very fun. It's like if
It's a
Gandalf's
great spell,
fireworks could
and it would be
actually
such a
like fight.
it's such a bummer if you would cast an amazing spell like that and someone goes plink at you, you roll your constitution save, and then this great illusory dragon goes away. This build is about making sure that particular frustration never ever happens. Illusory dragon friend forever.
And we've had a wonderful poll running in the chat, by the way. What save other than wisdom would you look for? And it looks like Constitution had an early lead, but ultimately a lot of people went dexterity. An interesting sort of answer for your wizard getting out of the way. Thank you very much. I love hearing those and the mods for running those. We do have
Yeah.
a quick joke question on this build from Aaron Lore. How did B-Day feel about characters at level 20?
This is, I believe, the first streamed campaign where B Dave did 20th level characters. The Agni of Kairos was the pilot test for what eventually became, I think, our favorite phenomenon. We those of us who've been lucky enough to be GM'd at 20th level by B Dave know that is an experience because he embraces the power of the 20th level and just uses it to throw more monster manual at you. And we love that energy from a GM, and it encouraged me to embrace my do my worst energy. I
And as
did
a
my
serious
worst.
question to go with that, it was asked, what do you think of the capstone ability? Or in this case, why did you opt against it? Just worth the trade for the cleric level?
Pretty much. It there were I did want to have two strong saving throws. Uh in that dexterity, constitution, and wisdom are the three most popular saving throws, and so while I would have had the option of the dex saving throw as a wizard, the notion of this wizard getting mind controlled seemed deeply distressing and like a very, very, very bad idea. By contrast, the trade off, getting that third level signature spell, was not quite enticing enough in that I think most of the time I would be using higher level spell slots in a combat, and at 20th level, you're not running out anytime soon. Since there wasn't something I wanted to spam as much as I wanted to be nicely armored and not mind controlled, uh, the idea ultimately was Cleric 1. And bookworm
I
skills. I
love that.
cannot overstate bookworm skills.
So, you alluded to this earlier, but what did you choose as a background? And was it mechanical complement, character complement, or a little of both?
Hmm. Yes, I chose this was the first time I had ever discovered the wonder of the urchin background. And yes, at the beginning it was a touch mechanical. I didn't have another source of stealth proficiency, quite frankly. And I like having stealth proficiency. Especially because then I don't screw it up for the poor rogue. I don't want to be the one who fluffs it. Um, someone is going to it. Just I didn't want to be holding that particular hot potato while the rogue is out there throwing 34 or something. Um, but it was also dictated by the idea of the campaign of 0 to 20. I wanted a character who started from nothing. And
Mm.
the urchin background complemented that theme to me very nicely and gave me an opportunity to explore nothing to everything on a very different scale, especially because as a wizard, the powers you have to change your material condition are immense. The least useful, most character driven spells on my list, there are many of them, are all about the spells that build you homes. From
Oh,
Leoman's tiny hut to even little rope trick, where I would curl up and just bing my spells out. To in at least one game for this character, I did get to finish the mighty fortress that if you cast for a year and a day will become permanent.
I mean, that's truly incredible. I uh I had not noticed this
Also,
pattern in the spells. See, learning to read these spell choices and figure out the people who've made them is such a delightful thing. What level is looking
Mighty Fortress is
for?
under my known spells, but not under, I think, the spells that I had prepared for this particular adventuring day. Um,
Got it. Okay, I'm just looking it
One
up
of the
then.
things you'll notice at 20th level is I had 80 spells known as a wizard. I can prepare 29.
That's so many spells.
It's so many spells, and it's great. It means I can pack all sorts of weird situational ones I would never have room for. But it's where a lot of the very flavor spells. So I do have a tiny hut. I do have I have secret chest. I have Private Sanctum. I have Mighty Fortress, a bunch of spells in this list that were not about being optimized, but were entirely about spells that I thought would make this urchin background character who didn't have a home very happy.
That's amazing. So, tactically, you thought through things like choosing spells that would force people to make different kinds of saves. And
Mhm.
obviously, we have ones that like work with your concentration advantages, have some flexible
Yes.
damage types, and then for your utility spells, you themed them around inspiration from your urchin background. I, I love this. This is so much fun. Any other customizations or things that we might not have talked about yet on this character sheet?
Hmm. Let's see. I think one thing I should talk about is wish. I mentioned that I had access to first level cleric spells because that's how it works when you multi-class a full caster. So I can use any of those slots, but I only had access to first level cleric spells. We had about half a paladin, half a sorcerer, and that was our healing. Uh, Half a paladin doesn't get you up to important things like raising dead, resurrecting, revivification. There were just some holes even in a 20th level party that aren't accommodated for and weren't even accommodated for by my build. I tried a bunch of different ways, couldn't figure out what to do about it, and then we come to the wish spell. If you want to talk about an over engineered solution, we don't
This
have
is
access
the
to
wish
greater
I brought a
restoration.
cleric spell?
Yes. Regeneration, resurrection, restoration, wish. Once a day, I can be a good cleric.
That's what does it say? Like some things are priceless, for everything else there's wish.
So
When
while
you're
it
spell
sometimes has
shopping.
monumental implications as a spell, its function of duplicating anything 8th level or lower came in wildly handy. And just a reminder that sometimes you can find very extra solutions to your party comp. You can still be a war mage. You don't have to take levels in healer as long as you are willing to cast a 9th level spell about it.
I love that. Oh, I love this. Laura Merho asks, in terms of putting this character into motion, how did your character learn those spells? Was there a moment in game that you remember where you learned or picked up some useful spell?
Oh, this was incredibly relevant in that where people like our 0 to 20 sorcerers got their powers immediately because sorcerers are like that. Uh, my character got a book. That is the whole of their power. They are an ordinary bookworm, maybe that one level in cleric just from loving this book so gosh darn much and the being who was willing to give it to them, but they did not mechanically get their powers until they read that book because they wouldn't know the spells. They wouldn't know what's in there. And so sometimes for skill checks that used those expertises, I would roll to see whether an intelligence check to see whether maybe I could flip through and find something ad hoc. But until my character got enough of a long rest to read their whole book, I played them mostly as just the cleric one. Wizards have to learn things. This character learned those spells by reading the book that contained them, that they were given as a gift.
That's so cool. What advice would you have for someone rolling their first nearly level 20 war mage?
Mm. I think if you are rolling your first war mage, part of what that lets you do is cushion your decisions. What War Mage gives you is a little safety, safety from getting hit, safety from losing those super valuable high level concentration spells. So the good news is that you can just pick things you like. Be aware of how many spells you might want to have that are concentration because you can't take them all. You can't cast all the concentration spells at once. So think about what you might most likely want to have, but feel free to take a whole bunch of other spells because you are a big deal war mage. You have more spells than you know what to do with. Tr- Spell selection took me days. Days. Go ahead, pick something just because you think it's cool and weird and you don't know if you might use it. Even at 20th level, you still can find wizard spells and put them into your grimoire and add to your spells known. This is just what's given to you mechanically by level, and D&D also lets you add spells organically through the story. So even if 80 spells aren't enough for you, you can have more.
What do you get for the wizard who has everything? It's answer's always more best. Um,
Yes.
uh,
Yes. Yes, it
when
is.
you so if you've got 89 spells and you're waking up in the morning, like, what am I going to do today? How on earth do you narrow that down?
Oh gosh, it's so hard. I would pack my loadout that I knew I would probably always want. Fireball, counterspell, fireball. Um, did I met You end up using it a lot for good reason. The illusory dragon that I was probably going to cast, that handful of damage spells, I know I'm probably going to want. My wish spell, uh, just in case. And from there, a lot of it was about what I knew of the circumstance I was going into. The Going into a session, I had a little bit of a standard loadout that had a little bit of everything, a damage spell for each major save, a spell targeting a charisma save. I think it might have been force cage, might have been banishment, things like that. Um, an intelligence save spell, uh, and then from there, what I thought might be useful. Oh, my rope trick. It really is handy. You just go out down your rope, pew pew, use the rest of your movement to go back up your rope, and no one can target you inside the rope trick. It is cheesy, but cheese is delicious.
But in combination with
Uh,
your shield and your misty step,
because I can't always be in the rope trick. Sometimes my GM won't let me be in the rope trick, but then I have even more layers to protect. 144 hit points goes fast. It goes so much faster than you think, especially if you're in a party of people who have many more hit points than 144. How much damage do you think can be? It's a lot. It's a lot. But if you
we
know
do have
what
a
you're doing,
question.
yes, yes, sir.
Uh, few more questions on this very important questions, such as, are there specific dice that you use for tails, digital or physical?
Oh gosh, it was all of them. Uh, that's the thing. If you work by the house rule, as some GMs do, that you can crit on spells, and it is a house rule. You need even more dice than way more dice than you think you need. Um, and ninth level spells. Well, I mean, Meteor Swarm needs 20d6. 20! 20d6. So as taking on the role of Tails, did I use it as a transparent excuse to get more dice? Yes, absolutely. You couldn't possibly expect me to hold a damage number in my head while I re rolled dice. Could you? Imagine.
Just
Imagine.
buckets of dice. Always good. Always good. Mm. This has been so much fun. Is there, let's see, why herbalism kit and why disguise kit?
Hmm. Yes. Disguise kit, I believe, comes from the urchin background. You'd have to double check me. It could be my naive tool proficiency. But the herbalism kit is the tool proficiency that I used for my prodigy, where you get the skill, the tool proficiency, and the language. I No one else had it, and I, try to balance those sorts of things, and I didn't know. I thought it might come up, and with the nature check that character has, I thought I could maybe do some cool stuff with it, especially because, again, we did not have an overabundance of healing resources beyond my one level of cleric, my wish spell, and about half a paladin.
Well, altogether, it's an incredible package. Thank you so much for sharing tales with us. If you missed it, the link is down below or going through chat right now, so you can poke around and take a look at this great build. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And Sam,
Thank
where
you.
can people find you for more of this excellent, excellent advice?
You can find me as a role playing performer, variety streamer throughout the Twitchernet, making terrible choices to wonderful characters who don't deserve me as a player. The schedule for which is on my twitch.tv about page, Delevely, Delevely. All of my one offs and special events like this can be found on Twitter at Tchaikovsky. It's right below my face, Chaikovsky.
And this has been another really fun Tell Me About Your Character. Make sure you're checking out the pre-orders we've got running right now, and we will see you next time on D&D Beyond.
It's D&D.